the top 10 movies of the month for April 2018. My name is Stephen Ablett and I'm basically doing the series to give you an overview of all the films that have come out this month. Now, I actually saw 12 films. I do the top 10, but 2 honourable mentions are Isle of Dogs. First of all, I did not like this film. It didn't make my top 10 for obvious reasons because it's not in there, and it was just very weird. It was a super freaky animation about these talking dogs, but half the film is in Japanese. The dogs speak English, but the humans speak Japanese, so you get that language barrier, and you're reading the subtitles for some of the film, and just it was very different. It was set in the future, like 20 years in the future, after this after this plague is hit, and it's spread by the dogs, and so they take all Japan. I think it's Japan. They take all the dogs, could be Korea, I forget now. They take all the dogs and deposit them on an island, and the dogs have to survive. And this one boy decides he wants to fly back over there and find the dog which was taken several years ago. It's it's a Wes Anderson type film, and let's just say it's an acquired taste. I do suggest you watch the trailer and decide for yourself whether it's worth watching. Some people love it. I know the reviews on Rotten Tomatoes has been quite high, so it just wasn't for me. Another one of my honourable mentions is Tremors 6. Now, Tremors 6, A Cold Day in Hell. It wasn't a bad film. It was actually it was a good film for what it was, but it was a very much straight-to-video movie. I've seen all 6 Tremors films and the TV series. There are 13 episodes of the TV series. The TV series is half good, half bad. Every upper episode is good, and all the other half of the series is bad. It's really weird. It's as though the budget was split over 7 episodes, and they had to make 13 episodes, so the last 6 were just made as a soap opera. Anyway, that's the TV series. For the film, this is the 6th one in the series. It's supposed to be set in the Arctic, but very quickly we suddenly find ourselves in very familiar territory. We're looking at we're basically at the bottom of some mountains in Canada, which they were clearly they had this whole comment about global warming was melting all the snow, but not where they were supposedly based. It was clear that their budget could extend to what they were trying to tell as a story, and I think they should have worked on the script a bit more to polish that explanation out. The Tremors, the monsters. We saw some of the offshooters, like I'm trying to not get. I can't call them. If you know the Tremors series, the monsters which can walk, not the Screechers because they weren't in here. There was the ones that could fly. What they're called, I can't use the name without getting a copyright, problems on the YouTube page. But there was one of those in the film, and then pretty much it was all down to worms. And we never saw the gestation period. We never saw the mini worms that the number 5 had. It was very much B-movie, straight-to-video fodder for the first 75% of the film, and I admit it was a struggle watching it. At the last 25%, something happens to Burt Gummer where it takes the film in a little bit of a new direction, and they need to do something with it. But they forget about using some of the techniques they've used in the past, and then they throw that out the window for the comical ending. So, anyway, it's worth watching if you're a fan of the series, but for everybody else, watch the first one again, because the first one is exactly the same plot as this one almost, only so much more fun. Okay, so that's the 2 honourable mentions. So number 10 on the films for this month is Deep Blue Sea 2. Deep Blue Sea 2. Now, this is a film, basically, if you saw the first Deep Blue Sea with Samuel L. Jackson, they've genetically engineered some sharks, and they basically, something happens, the experiment goes wrong, and the people have to survive. I'm trying not to go into spoiler territory for any of these films now, but I've got a nutshelled plot. So forgive me, I'll be careful with my words. So Deep Blue Sea 2, they've got these genetically engineered bull sharks. They're very aggressive and are very intelligent, and they've got there's a couple of human beings who they've got their own agenda and things go wrong and they have to survive. It's almost identical to the first film in almost every way. There are some moments with baby sharks which are quite interesting to watch. They're basically little piranhas, and there is a moment. There's many moments of tension because the beauty of the undersea sea station is it's the claustrophobia technique. You're surrounded by all these tunnels which are flooding up with water, and you have to survive. And something that a low budget movie can do well is, because of its limited budget, you only need one set which you can just change the lightings for and make it look like a different corridor and get that tense feeling of, is the monster under the water or not? And I do believe that this film does the very best it can do with the budget that it has, and I think it's worth watching. However, there's a few little nitpicks. One is our main female star doesn't know how to zip up her ski suit. I mean, yes, I get it, it's a straight-to-video movie, but we don't need to see her bosom, basically bursting out of her ski suit. It could have been sealed up a bit more. It's very distracting for the male actors if they're trying to survive a shark attack. And then there's other things like picking up weapons. It's like, okay, they could have... It was mentioned a few times. What you would think on a observatory just like this, they'd have spear guns and various other weapons, none of which are presented. But there are a number of deaths, and it's definitely ranks high. It ranks as a good film. I'm glad I watched it, and I will probably watch it again. I still think the first one's better, no denying that, because it had more of a budget to begin with. It could do special effects better, but it was a worthy sequel, and it lives up to its name of Deep Blue Sea 2. Number 9 is Love, Simon. Now, Love, Simon is a film about a teenage boy in high school who basically, he's secretly gay, and his secret gets released and he has to deal with the aftermath of that and forming his first homosexual relationship. It's a powerful film for the message it's trying to tell, and it was definitely ranks highly on my list for that reason. The plot was extremely well written and it's extremely engaging, and there are certain things happen where you think, well, that wouldn't happen in the real world, but they needed a story to take place, so here we go. There's websites that they talk about and community chat rooms that I've never heard of, but maybe that's just me. Maybe there's something in America about this, because we're in the UK here, we finish school at 16, and in America they go until 18, so they do have room for movies to have some focus for those last 2 years, those important years between 16 and 18, where you find out about yourself. I suppose they have that ability to tell that story that we don't, and there may be something there as well in the way that you develop as a person that makes it different to you guys in America than we do. But putting that aside, there was a few things that I didn't like. One thing was the main star was in a relationship. I say relationship. The main star was friends with a girl who he'd known for like 10 years. And there was a scene where he comes home drunk with the girl who's drunk, and they both go off to his room late at night drunk. The parents who are downstairs mention, are we okay letting him go upstairs? He's coming home before curfew drunk. And they're more bothered about the teenager drinking than the fact that he's just gone upstairs with a drunk girl to his room. And it's just weird. And now again, I don't know if this is something that I just never experienced as a teenager, but my parents I don't think would jump at. There'll be certain things I wouldn't want to broadcast what would you expect, and then what you do expect doesn't happen. Anyway, it's like it was in there because they need to set up some kind of extra layer of deception for what happens later on in the film. So they set up this relationship which sort of came out of nowhere, just because it meant they had an extra angle on what would happen when the big revelation came out. But I just felt somehow they could have written that better. But it was a good film, ranks in at number 9, and it's worth watching. However, do know that what the subject matter is means you don't want. It's only for certain people who are interested in that material, because other people. It is a teenage love drama. So yeah, very particular people will want to watch it. Number 8. This is a film called Orbiter 9, which was on Netflix. Now, Orbiter 9 was a foreign language film. I think it was Swedish, but I'm not positive. And basically, it's a film about these people who are being placed on spaceships and they're being flown across the universe to basically explore different planets in order to habitate and live on those. Now, there's a big plot twist, and I'm deliberately not going to tell you this, so I've got to be really careful with my wording here. But basically, if I give you there's one woman who's on a spaceship and her parents have died, so she's on the spaceship alone. But the ship's still going off to the planet, it's still on a mission, but something goes wrong on the ship and she has to explore that. And I won't tell you this, but if you're expecting some kind of big space opera, it's not that. It's not. Even though it's set in a spaceship, the plot twists will take you back down to reality, and I'm going to leave it at that. This is because of the way that this film works, and it's the secrets it keeps hidden. It's very good. It was fun to watch. It isn't in English, so you do have to bear in mind you do need to read, and there are some action scenes that take place in the second half of the film, mainly chasing scenes. I won't go into it too much. It's more of a compelling story, and it leaves you thinking, what would you do if you were one of these people in this situation? Would you make the same choice as they did? So Orbiter 9, you can find it on Netflix, check it out. Number 7 was Every Day. Now, Every Day is a film about this girl, or boy, we don't know what she is, but we'll presume, I'll say boy, this person, this demon or spirit that wakes up in a different teenager's body every single day. What we encounter is basically a short period of time in a couple of teenagers' journey, because the spirit wakes up in a boy's body, goes on a romantic day with a girl, and then when that spirit jumps to another body the next day, decides it wants to reunite with the girl who he has basically started to fall in love with. The film is interesting. It's basically a bit like Quantum Leap, the movie. If you remember Quantum Leap, the TV show, it's a bit like that, where they're travelling into different bodies, and he even explains it. Each time this spirit appears in somebody's body, he makes it his duty either to not disturb anything in their life or make changes that are beneficial. So he's got to put right what once went wrong. And so basically again, I don't want to go to spoiler territory, but there's certain people he jumps into and he does help them. And there's certain times he has to learn about himself and his abilities and his powers and wonder, where does he come from? Some questions are asked, such as, did he have a body originally? What will happen if he stays in the same body for more than a day? Is that possible? And yes, some of these questions do get answered. They don't answer the question about who he is and where he's from. They do reference it in regards to one of the people he takes over the next day, when he starts to think he was possessed by Satan. So they do show that other people, the people he's possessed, remember certain things from the day and how they perceive it. So we see it from that point of view. But what I would have liked to have seen would have been a scene between the spirit and the girl talking about, where do you think you came from? So were you a baby that died on childbirth, went up to heaven, and something happened and you got thrown back to earth, and so all you are now is a disembodied spirit that travels from body to body? So they're basically trying to give us some form of reason for what this person is. The other thing I want to say about this film is the ending. It wraps things up, but it's not the most satisfying ending in the world. Apparently it was based on a book, so if they kept to it, I can respect that, and I can understand why the decisions were made. They do explain it, why the decision was made, but I do think they could have come up with a better ending. He could have jumped into somebody's body who was brain dead and tried to bring back that life. I don't know. I don't want to give any spoilers into what takes place, but I think they could have found another way of approaching it, or just shown various things they could have done. Yes, but it's good. It's worth watching. It's still probably in the cinema, but it's up against an even bigger film, two big films for this month, so I don't think it'll be in the cinema for long. Number 6 on my list was Hurricane Heist. Now this is a film that if you probably didn't even see it when it was in the cinema. It was in and out of here before we even had a chance to notice it. But it ranks in at number 6, and I really enjoyed it. This is basically, if you saw the film Hard Rain with Christian Slater and Morgan Freeman, imagine it as Hard Rain 2, because I think that's probably what it was called. It was probably called Hard Rain 2 until suddenly they had a bit of a budget and they decided to, rather than go the straight to video route, they'll rename it Hurricane Heist. That would make sense to me, because basically there's a treasury where they're destroying old banknotes, and there's a heist that takes place where the people try and steal this money, and they're going to use this hurricane that's coming into town as cover for the heist. Now, it's pretty much all action-packed, and it is basically, it's almost verbatim Hard Rain, but there's a few things that happen. First of all, nitpicking it, the town gets flooded. So suddenly someone's got a speedboat, where does a speedboat come from? They're in the middle of nowhere. They're not near the ocean. So first of all, how does a town get flooded when they're not near the ocean? They're basically in the middle of countryside. But, okay. And then shortly afterwards, they're on the roads driving in cars and there's no water there. There's miles of fields surrounding this little town. So a town cannot get flooded if the surrounding area is not flooded. The water dissipates. It's not how flooding works. There we go. We'll put that to a side. And then you got to think about, okay, we're going to... They decide to open up the film by shooting sleeper darts into everybody rather than shooting people. But I'm not so sure that was a good idea if you really think about it, and the body armour didn't seem to do any good, and it was an interesting premise, but it had the twists and turns, the threats. I was a bit unsure about a scene in the shopping centre where they decided, in order to take out all the corrupt, without giving spoilers, the corrupt people, okay, they decide to use a technique to take out all of them, when it should have taken out, the same technique should have taken out the hostage, and it didn't. So I don't know. Well, you got to gloss over these things. This is a really extreme extravaganza, but it is a proper decent action epic, and the storm effects are tremendous. It starts off with this massive storm sequence which sets the tone for the film and gives us the reasoning for our two characters, one specifically, to be doing the job that he's doing. So I do respect it for everything it was able to do, and it has some... It's like Fast and the Furious meets Hard Rain. The Hurricane Heist was really good and well worth seeing. Number 5 is a straight-to-video movie called Suicide Squad: Hell to Pay. Now, this is part of the DC animated universe. We've got a bunch of the Suicide Squad DC villains all basically after this card, which will grant someone access to heaven. So basically, when you die, you've got an automatic pass to heaven rather than hell. It's like get out of hell free card. And so Amanda Waller wants this card for herself, and she sends a Suicide Squad out to go get it. Now, very quickly we establish the death of certain key characters, Count Vertigo for one, and other characters are going to die along the journey of this film. So it's not there are lots of consequences that happen, and certain people show up who we don't know how long they're going to be there for. It's very interesting. I like the fact that they start killing off people. These are killers going after other killers, so it makes sense that there should be some deaths. Yes, there should probably be more deaths than what we saw, but it was a very fun epic with lots of action set pieces, and we got to see teams of villains slash heroes going up against other people. The person who has the ticket, people are questioning whether the ticket's real, whether it's just a scrap of paper that somebody made up, and who gets the ticket, whether it's been used yet. People don't know whether the ticket has been used yet or not. So there's a lot of these questions it sets up, and it was an enjoyable feature that you should check out. Number 4 was Death Wish with Bruce Willis. This is Bruce Willis's time back in the spotlight. This is Die Hard 7. Well, this is like Die Hard the prequel, because basically Death Wish is basically Bruce Willis is a surgeon, and every reason for how he's able to get the gun and how he's able to get all the things he needs make more sense when he's a surgeon. Because I'm aware that the original, I've not seen it, but the guy was an architect, which makes you question how he's able to get the information of who to go after and where does he get his guns. But Bruce Willis as a surgeon, that's explained and answered. For those that don't know, Death Wish is a remake of the original, of basically someone who's, while he's at work, his family get attacked at home, and while they're in a coma, he decides to take vengeance and clean up the streets by himself. Bruce Willis is basically giving it all his all. And recently, in some of his other straight-to-video films, he's been phoning it in. But here, he makes for a very compelling action hero. He's a little bit smaller than some of the other people. He seems to have lost some of the bulk and muscle mass that we're known to see Bruce Willis have. But even so, he represents the embodiment of pure vengeance, and he is a very defined. This is clearly an Oscar-worthy nominated position. As much of it's an action film, I think he really gave it gravitas, the stakes that he was under, and the story that he was trying to do. So Death Wish is definitely worth checking out. It's probably out the cinema by now, unfortunately, but when you do find it, I do suggest you watch it, especially those people who love Die Hard. It's nice to see that character, well, not that character, but you can't help but see John McClane in Bruce Willis. It's just the way we are. Number 3 is A Quiet Place. You heard that, okay. In A Quiet Place, it's a very scary film. This is basically Tremors. This is Tremors 6. This is what Tremors should have been. Number 3. So basically, you've got these monsters that have attacked the Earth. It's set, I think, 2 years in the future. They do explain it. A meteorite has hit Mexico. It's explained on a newspaper headline on the board. Most people miss that. I saw that in the reviews. So a meteorite hit Mexico, and all these aliens came off this meteorite, spread around the planet. Not so sure how or where, but they spread around the planet. And so our hero is basically on his radio. He's trying to communicate around the world, trying to find out which one of the countries hasn't yet got aliens on it, but he hasn't found any. So we've got to presume that since when they landed in Mexico, they were able to spread around the planet. Now, these aliens hunt by sound. So if you make any kind of sound, they will hear it and they'll come and eat you. We're presuming we get eaten because we never actually see that. They just get taken away. They just get slashed or taken away. So there is a possibility they could still be alive, but we'll presume for now that they're dead. And then the film's all about very tense moments because there's a few human beings. Once they learned that it was sound, it was all about basically how do you soundproof everything, and when you make a sound, how does that affect us? Are you in danger? Because you've got animals like raccoons, and then you've got who make sounds, and if they're attracted to that, you're still in the area. And the closer they are to the aliens, that they've got big ears, but if there's some distance away, there's still a possibility they might not hear you. Depends on the proximity. Another thing that they found is like waterfalls and rivers. The noise that they make, they seem to tune out. Now this is a plot flaw to me, because it makes sense that if you've discovered this, Why don't you go live next to the waterfall? Surely the best place to put your house is right there. Just build a tree house next to the waterfall where it's safe. But that seems to be getting ignored. But they did set up some kind of system where they had these fire lights that they put out on the top of the houses, so that each night they could visibly mark where, who was still alive. They still had electricity, which didn't make any sense because electricity creates lots of noise, and if it's from a generator, it would make tons of noise. And where they were, which was a farm in the middle of nowhere, I doubt there was any electricity even before the invasion. So we'll put that aside. We'll put lots of things aside, but it was a very tense film. It's not long. I think it's only 80 minutes, 85 minutes, 90 minutes including credits. But it's basically Tremors. It's Tremors without the comedy, and it's weird that it's on the same list as Tremors 6 really, because this is a properly done one. And they have this main bulk of the story is that one of them becomes pregnant, and they've got to decide how do you bring a baby into a world where you're not allowed to make a noise. And let's just say they do think about that problem. Number 2 on my films for this month is Rampage. Now, Rampage, starring The Rock, Dwayne Johnson, is an absolute epic. I saw this one in 4DX, so I was wearing the glasses. And the problem with 4DX, as I mentioned this in my Avengers review, which is giving a bit of a spoiler for number 1, is that they spray water in your face, and the water lands on the glasses, and then your vision goes all blurred. So you've got to take the glasses off, clean them up, and you miss them in the film. So I'm not a big fan of 4DX. I've left that. I'm leaving that behind. I really don't want to see any more films in that theatre. But Rampage was a very enjoyable monster movie, which has lots of scenes that build up the tension. But so you got a scene with the monkey, the scene with the wolf, and they're all attacking people. Again, I'm trying not to do too many spoilers. And they all accumulates to a big fight at the end. So basically everything that you want to see is the big moment at the end, but it doesn't jump straight into that, it builds up. It gives us little bits to set up the tension, so we have this big moment at the end with the big release. It does have some comedy moments. Some of the jokes were okay, some of the jokes were a bit vulgar, I should say. But I think if you can ignore that a little bit, your teenagers, your 13 and upwards, would probably love to see these monsters fight each other on the big screen. And the special effects are great. There's a plane crash sequence which is very tense. The monkey, you really do believe that is a monkey. Unlike in some other CGI films where you can tell it's a CGI effect, here you really did believe that these were real monsters attacking. And when they did attack the city, boy, they were attacking. If anything, I would like to have seen the monkey get bigger, even bigger than what he was. The monkey got big, but the crocodile got so big, you have to question why did one creature get bigger than the other two. But I'm nitpicking. It really was everything you could hope for in a Rampage film, and it's probably the best video game adaptation that I've seen in a long time. So I'm going to put that at number 2. But I now need to jump to number 1, and if you checked out the other review, the video that came out at the same time I did this list, it's going to be Avengers Infinity War. Now, Avengers Infinity War is probably going to be the best film of the year. It's not without its flaws, and I've got another review where I really dig into some of those flaws, so I don't want to go over that again here. But in a nutshell, it's a film you have to see. It's a work of art, how they gave every character enough screen time so you really feel they got their just deserves. Everything, they really got the essence of what they were into this movie, yet they still had time to spread around the story. Because if you think with like 40 odd characters in the film, certain people are going to get shortchanged, and they were. People like certain people weren't even in the film that you would expect to be in there. But Thanos actually had a backstory, and they actually gave us some time to just literally learn about him, learn about who he was and what he was trying to do. and why he wasn't just a villain, he was a villain because he had a goal and he had his people who he wanted to see it go through. So for that reason, Avengers Infinity War is clearly my film of the month. The best thing I can say is check out my other review if you want spoilers on that, but that is the very spoilerish review. Do not check it out if you've not seen it yet, because it is a film you're going to want to talk about afterwards. And there was especially after the ending, you're really going to want to share ideas and share where you think the future of the MCU is heading. So that's my top 10 films of April 2018. We're going to go through that list. Number 10 was Deep Blue Sea 2. Number 9 was Love, Simon. Number 8 was Orbiter 9. Number 7 was Every Day. Number 6 was Hurricane Heist. Number 5 was Suicide Squad, Hell to Pay. Number 4 was Death Wish. Number 3 was A Quiet Place. Number 2 was Rampage. And number 1 was Avengers Infinity War. I hope you enjoyed that. I know I do occasionally go into spoiler territory when I'm not trying to. For some people, I was checking the comments of some of the previous videos, and people are going on about, oh, go back to Magic School series or go back to other things. This is my channel. I do this because I love these lists, and I think I can talk about films that you may not have heard or picked up on, like Orbiter 9. You completely probably missed that one because it was on Netflix in a foreign language. But I think if I tell people about these films, you might find something that you can then go away and watch yourself. And if I'm ranking it higher, on my list, there must be something to it, and it hopefully will inform you of what films you might want to watch. As for things like Magic School, there is a new series coming along with the puzzle series. You might have noticed that there is a new video appearing every Friday at about 3 o'clock with a new puzzle series, there's more to do with that, as you will soon see, but for now you can just play the game. So there are things happening to this channel and there are things developing, but mainly I do all these videos for myself. So if you want to leave a comment, please do. If you want to like and subscribe, please do. If you unlike, I can't stop you, but it doesn't make me happy, but that's just the way it is. Anyway, that was the top 10 films of this month. Check me out, check out some of the other videos, and I will see you next time.